All right, so this is a topic that talks about specifically how to hedge foreign currency with options and forwards. This is also the lecture. It's going to help you survive the case study next week. All right. You could opt out of it. You can get a 0, but that's an option, I guess. I don't know what you're talking about. All right. All right, so we're talking about...
You can hand in like a 8-page.
All right. I think we've had the appropriate amount of whining to move on to the actual lecture. All right, so how to construct FX hedges, all right, foreign exchange hedges. We'll also talk about how to set up options and forward contracts in foreign currencies, and we'll talk about how to value foreign currency options using Black-Scholes. All right, this is the option pricing model. So let's start off with a very simple company. This company, PA Widgets, 1 year from now, they are going to import widgets for 20 million pesos and sell them the same day for 1 million pounds. That's the entire business. So 1 year from now, they're going to have a liability to pay 20 million pesos and then sell them immediately for 1 million pounds. So let's talk about the expected cash flow. Well, everything happens in 12 months. So if you sign a contract to pay 20 million pesos, get the widgets, sell the widgets in 1 year exactly to London and get 1 million pounds. All right, so just make it easier. Everything happens 1 year from now. So what's their expected cost and revenue? Well, 1 year from now, they expect to pay 20 million pesos. So the question is, well, how many dollars should I expect to get? Well, you send me an email and you say, hey, Gaddis, send me the Bloomberg screen on the forward contracts with the peso. So I send that to you. The current price of the peso is 1778. This is from, what was this, 2017. And the 12-month forward contracts are 1880 bid and 1881 ask. Now the actual price points, for those of you who care, it's 17,788.3 bid with 10,162 pips. So I'm going to add 10162 to this exchange rate. However, the Bloomberg screen actually does the math for me, so I didn't have to actually do the conversion. So these are the bid and ask prices for trading pesos for dollars 1 year from now. And remember where we got these. Bloomberg just surveys banks and asks banks, what prices are you quoting customers to buy and sell pesos 1 year from now? They collect that data from dozens and dozens of banks, and these are the best buying and selling prices for pesos 1 year from now. Yes?
How often is this updated? Daily?
It's blinking as you look at it. Yeah. It's blinking as you look at it. So they're changing every minute. Okay? So you're going to use this information, and what you could do is you can take these prices and you can call your local bank and say, hey, here's what I just saw. Can we lock into, say, 1880, 1881 for 1 year delivery? I want to buy 20 million pesos 1 year from now. Can we lock in at 1880? Something. Okay? However, forward prices are also unbiased forecasts of future exchange rates. So if I had to guess what the exchange rate was 1 year from now, I would just use these numbers. So I'm going to use the 188045, this one right here, because that's the best guess that I can get for the price that I can buy pesos for next year. Because, as we learned in lecture 2 or 3, right? If we had to pay 20 million pesos, we need $1 per peso exchange rate to get the dollar amount. I'm going to get screwed in this market. I'm going to pay the highest peso price. which actually means 1 over the lowest peso price if I had to convert it back to dollars. So if I multiply 20 million times 1 over 18.8045, I expect to pay $1,063,577 for my pesos 1 year from now. You okay? That's my best guess of my cost. That's just using the forward price. Any questions? Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it's the right question, but when you're taking those on your other slides,
This?
yeah. Are those numbers already accounting for any economic or social or political impact?
Yes.
So,
Well, two answers. Yes, and I don't care. Yes, meaning those are quotes by banks that are willing to trade currencies a year from now. I would think they are building in their forecast of what's happening to exchange rates. But in some sense, I don't care because that's the quote that they're giving me. So yes, I think they account for everything that's expected to happen. However, I could just call the bank and say, give me that exchange rate. That's the best exchange rate I can get. So it sometimes doesn't matter what my opinion is. That if I wanted to lock into it, that's the price. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you. I have a backup on this one, by the way. So, and I can always do it back in my office. All right. So I think I'm going to get $1,063,000, or it's going to cost me $1,063,000 to buy 20 million euros or 20 million pesos to buy my widgets. I expect to sell those widgets for £1,000,000. All right. Well, what's the expected dollar per pound exchange rate next year? Here's the pound. So on this date, it was selling for 129, and looks like about 130 is the 1.3083 or 6 seems to be the forward price. That's my best guess at the exchange rate 1 year from now. I'm going to be selling pounds, buying dollars. So I'm going to wind up getting the lowest one because they're going to screw me in this market, right? I'm going to get the lowest price, not the highest. They're just middlemen, so they have to make a profit. So I'm going to wind up getting 13083. So I'll use that 13803. So I expect to get $1.3 million. Nice little business, right? I'll buy my widgets from the Mexicans for $1 million and sell them to the British for $1.3 million.
What are the values down the side? Like on TN, SN?
This?
Is that like time? 1 month, 2 weeks? Okay. 12 months. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. So this is spot, overnight, and this is, I forget what these mean, but it's more like second or third days, a couple days, 1 week, 1 month, and then out to 2 years.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I should have paused and talked about that. Yeah, so spot, overnight, and I forget, that's like third night or something like that. I forget what TN means, but it's a couple days later. All right, so that's good. This is what I expect to earn in profit. Now, this is my expected profit because forward exchange rates are expected exchange rates. They're unbiased predictors of future exchange rates. So that is my expected profit. Also, since I used these forwards, it could also be my guaranteed profit because I could use, if I could lock into these exchange rates, I wouldn't have any risk. All right, so this is my expected profit, and also call it, it could be my hedged profit of actually put in the forward contracts on. So today I sign a contract to buy 20 million pesos at 18.8045, and today I buy a contract 1 year from now to sell £1 million at $1.3083. And if I sign those two contracts today, that is my hedged profit. My only risk then is my, the delivery doesn't happen. My supplier screws me or my customer screws me. Okay? So let's talk about putting on those hedges. So I'm going to call my bank. Since I'm armed with my Bloomberg data, I'll call my bank and I'll say, hey, I'd like to put in a contract to buy those pesos 1 year from now. Hey, I saw the Bloomberg was 18.8045. Where are you today? And your bank might say, I can match that, or they might also try to give you some kind of story. Well, Bloomberg's not really up to date. The best I can do is this. Fine. That's close enough, right? So you have some kind of give and take. And what I would do is I would just call 3 banks and say, hey, what's your best price? And just take the best one. All right, so let's talk about my IMM for PA widget. What is their exposure? Well, they're long the pound and short the peso. In other words, they benefit if they lose if the pound devalues, or they lose if the peso appreciates. That's their two basic positions. They lose if the pound they're about to receive, the pound exchange rate declines, or if they have to pay more to get the peso. So those are their two exposures. They're long the pound and short the peso. You okay with that? They're long, 1 million pounds, and they're short 20 million pesos. So those are their two positions, 1 million pounds and 20 million pesos. You could do a 10% stress test. So if I just change the exchange rate by 10% on the pound, they could lose $106,000. And if I change the exchange rate on the pound, they could lose $130,000. So that's a 10% stress test on the pound and the euro for them, on pound and the peso for them. All right, just a 10% change. They could do a 1 year. This isn't EAR now. This is CAR, which is cash flow at risk. All right. I'll just take my V times 1.65 times the standard deviation of the exchange rate. So I'll take my 20 million pesos times a 1.65 standard deviation change. The standard deviation is $0.006 per peso, which I can just estimate from, say, the last 5 years of data. And I can say, you know what? There's a 5% chance we lose $198,000 or more due to our exposure to the peso. And there's a 5% chance in 1 year I could lose $181,000 or more due to our exposure with the pound.
What does the CAR stand for?
Cash flow at risk instead of earnings at risk. Yeah, so we're not focused on income statements, balance sheets here. We're just going to talk about cash. Okay. All right, so that's just a simple way of quantifying your risk. And what was their expected profit? Like 300? No, 244? So these seem material, right? This could be almost all of your profit. There's a 5% chance almost all your profit goes away. So it is material. It is hedgeable. It's really easy to hedge. You make a phone call and it's done. It's not too costly at all. Actually, forward contracts have no cost. You just call the bank and say, hey, I want a contract to buy 20 million pesos at what was that exchange rate? 1880. Can you do it? Yeah, cool. Send. All right, send it to my lawyers. Done. Hey, thanks. See you next year. That's literally all it takes. So it's not too costly. You're not macro diversified. You only have 2 transactions in your business. So you're going to hedge this one. How you're going to hedge it? You're going to enter into a contract to sell 1 million pounds and buy 20 million pesos. That's what you're going to do. This kind of talked about things I've been talking about before, like how do you actually enter into a contract? The first thing I would do is price discovery. I would find someone that has access to a Bloomberg, Reuters, or other financial services machine, screen, data set. Get that screenshot of where the forward prices are. Then
You told us to call you, right?
You could call me.
I'll do that.
You can call me. I've gotten calls in the past. I just got to walk down to the trading room and log in and get it. So you just get that information. And then I would call my 3 local banks. Because I never want to try to find out who in Bloomberg has the best quote. I just want to deal with my normal bank, right? I don't want to. So I'll use that information. It's like going to Best Buy and having like quotes on the internet. Like, I want to buy it from you, but here's the best price. Can you kind of match that? Well, I can't match it. Okay, close enough. Thanks, right? That's what's going on here. Like, I just want to deal with the people near me that I deal with all the time. So then you get those quotes, you take the best rate, and you sign a contract, and you're hooked. You're done. 1 year from now, you now have a contract to buy 20 million pesos and sell 1 million pounds. Could be 2 different banks, could be the same bank, doesn't matter. Any questions? Pretty easy, right? So here's what the cash flows look like. This does not look, oh, that's the busiest page. Andy Gustafson would hate me with slides like this, all right? Yeah, but he never had to hedge FX, all right? So here's what it looks like. We enter in those 2 contracts, one to sell 1 million pounds at a $1.3083. In other words, we are going to deliver 1 million pounds and receive $1.308 million. That's what the contract is going to specify. Then we signed another contract to take delivery of 20 million pounds, which we'll then use to pay off the vendor in Mexico. and deliver $1.063 million, which is the exchange rate of 18.8245. So that's literally the two contracts we have. We're going to deliver £1 million and take delivery of 20 million pesos. Any questions on that? Pretty simple. Now, if these contracts are physical delivery, in other words, they get an envelope and there's your 20 million pesos, or they come up in your account, it could be that way. It's just literally just the money flowing into me and I send the money to the other person. However, some contracts aren't specified as physical delivery. Some contracts are specified as cash settle. And you can have a choice which one you want. All right. So bear with me. This is the part's a little confusing, but it's going to make life a little bit easier on the next couple slides. Let's just pretend these are cash settle. What that means is, say for this contract here, I'm not actually going to send someone £1 million. I'm just going to sign a contract that pays me if the pound devalues. And I'm going to sign a contract that pays me money if the peso appreciates. Right? Because those are my two exposures. My exposure is to a devaluing pound, right? So I just need a contract that pays me if the pound appreciates. And my other exposure is to a appreciating peso. So I just want a contract that pays me if the peso appreciates. So, luckily, Wall Street has solved this problem and said, you don't really need physical delivery. I'll just give you contracts that pay you money based on the exchange rate. Kind of Las Vegas style bets on the exchange rate. That's all it is. So you can get cash settle contracts which pay you the difference between whatever the forward price is you agreed upon, say 18 or $1.30. And you'll agree upon that forward price. Then whatever the exchange rate is next year, the difference times a quantity of, say, £1 million or 20 million pesos, that'll be the payment from one counterparty to another.
So both ways, you can either lose money or make.
Exactly. So the question is, do you want a contract that has a payoff of whatever the spot price is next year minus the forward price times the quantity? Or do you want a contract as the forward price minus the spot price next year times the quantity?
Different if we're in Vegas and we're playing roulette, and you can either put a lot of money on one or you can put a little bit of money on a lot. To me, it sounds like you're putting a little bit of money on a lot.
Well, let's work through the example, and then I'll talk about how you could do this if you were not actually in the business. You just want to bet on the exchange rate. So let me talk about that in a minute. So let's just talk about the pound. So let's say they don't get a physical delivery contract. They just get a contract that pays them if the pound devalues. So they enter into a contract where they're called the short party in the contract. You have in other words, in the contract, they're considered the seller of the pound, right? So eventually they want to sell pounds and buy dollars. They negotiate the forward price of $1.30, the same as up here. But it's not physical delivery. They are just going to get a contract that pays them this. Going to pay them 1.3, $1.30 minus whatever the spot price is times the quantity. Now remember, so again, their payoff is this: $1.30. It's hard to write with this. Their payoff is $1.30.83 minus whatever the spot price is next year times 1 million. That's the contract they have. Now, what is the expected spot price? What is it supposed to be next year? What is the exchange rate supposed to be next year? It's expected to be 130. So the expected payoff of this contract is 0. Going into it, the expected payoff is 0. No one's expecting to pay or receive money. However, what if the exchange rate winds up being $1.20 next year? They are going to receive 10.8 cents times $1 million. They're going to get a check for $108,000 from Goldman Sachs. You got that? So now it looks like a Las Vegas style bet on the exchange rate that pays them money if the pound devalues. And that's literally what this contract is. Now, here's what's amazing about this thing. So, next year, the exchange rate winds up being $1.20. They signed up this contract where they specified that they want this payoff function at the forward price minus whatever the spot price times the million. They wind up getting a check for $108,000, $108,300. They put that in the bank.
Who's paying that check?
They just received $108,000.
From the bank?
Yep. Yeah, because they had a bet and they lost, right? They had the Patriots and the Patriots won, or what? That's it. It's just a bet. Now they're going to go out and say next year they got their widgets and they sold them to the British and they got their £1 million. They're going to sell their £1 million at the market next year, $1.20, and get $1.2 million, right? So that's unhedged right there, right? They're just going to wind up selling their £1 million at $1.20. But then they had this check from Goldman Sachs for 108.3. When you put those two numbers together, oh my God, it's the same thing as if they had a physical delivery contract to take physically deliver £1 million and receive $1.3 million.
So it is like putting 5 on red, 5 on black.
No. Well, in some sense, it's perfect. You're set. Yes, in some sense, it's perfectly hedged. But what if the pound goes to 50 cents? What if ST is 50 cents? Brexit goes terribly and they're in a stagflation and everyone hates them in Europe and they're cut off and everything goes bad. And their food sucks already, so it's like the worst place in the world, right? So you got 50 cents a pound. You got 50 cents a pound. They're going to sell their £1 million and get how much? $500,000. How much are they going to get from Goldman Sachs? I don't know what that number is. When they add them both together, it's exactly $1.308 million. They are perfectly hedged. It doesn't matter what happens to the exchange rate. When you put those two numbers together, they'll get exactly $1.3 million. However, let's do it the other way. What if the exchange rate, everything goes well? Brexit was awesome. It's selling for $2. They're going to sell their £1 million and get $2 million. But they're going to wind up paying Goldman Sachs $700,000. So this is a cash settled contract, effectively has the same result as physical delivery. The main benefit of the cash settle is China. China has restrictions on moving their currency offshore. So I couldn't just have a contract to send $1 million, or have Goldman Sachs send me $1 million RMB. So what Goldman Sachs does is this for you. Effectively, it's the same thing. So yes, China restricts their currency from trading overseas, but you can still hedge it by doing a cash settle contract. All right, and then this is just on the peso side. All right. I could have hedged the peso by having a physical delivery contract to buy 20 million pesos. Or I can just enter into a contract where my payoff is ST, whatever the spot price is next year, minus the forward price. What was that? 1/188045. I'm going to put that in direct terms. Times 20 million. So I just have a contract that has that payoff. And I just said, well, what would happen if the exchange rate actually turns out to be 15? Well, if the exchange rate turns out to be 15, that's an appreciation of the peso. I'll make $269,000. So Goldman Sachs mails me a check for $269,000. I then go ahead and buy my 20 million pesos at the current market of 15 next year. That cost me, what is that number? Anyone have a calculator up? What's 20 million divided by 15? What's 20 million divided by 15? What? 133. Give me some more decimals. 133. What else we got? Oh, it just keeps repeating. Okay. All right. So I now, and actually this should be negative. This should be negative. Make those two changes. I'm going to pay $1.3 million to buy the pesos because the peso appreciated from 18 to 15. However, Goldman paid me $269, so my negative is not negative 1.3 million, it's negative $1,063,000, which is the exact same thing as if it was a physical delivery contract to take delivery of 20 million pesos at $18. 18 pesos per dollar. And if the peso goes to 5 pesos per dollar, you're just going to get a bigger check from Goldman Sachs. And it's still going to cost you $1.8 million. So that's it. You are hedged. Now, yes.
Can a person do this individually with Goldman Sachs without?
I'm sure, but yeah, probably post a lot of collateral. They'll make you put some money in a separate account, just make sure that, some homeless person off the street, you're not going to get a $20 million contract on pounds. Because if they win, they make a lot of money. If they lose, they just don't show up. Right? So they're going to, if you're a big corporation, you'll be able to do the contract with Goldman Sachs. But if you're not, they'll just make you post collateral. Put some money in an account just to make sure no one walks away.
I was just thinking about how, these are big corporations that protected these contracts, but how the average Joe would be with the
I would go to my a local branch of a big bank, and they could set that up for me. Yeah, just go to your B of A or someone, or M&T or someone like that. Yeah.
You talked about collateral. Is that secured or unsecured debt collateral?
Well, my mind is just putting $50,000 in an account or posting a bond, treasury bond equal to that amount, or some percentage of the total transaction. So yeah, I haven't thought that far down the line. So that's it. Now, this whole cash settle things makes things really confusing, right? If physical delivery makes perfect sense, right? I have a contract. I'm going to buy the 20 million pesos at 18 and sell the £1,000,000 at $1.30. Everything is good. So why do we really do the cash settle? Again, two reasons. One is China. For currencies that are not traded outside their borders due to restrictions, this is the only way to hedge it. Two is for modeling purposes. It just so happens by modeling it this way, you can start seeing your exposure based on different hedging scenarios. So let's jump into this spreadsheet here. I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to double click here, and you'll be launched into Excel after a minute. Hopefully. There we go. Everyone there? So on Launcher, just double click on the spreadsheet, and you'll be in Excel in PowerPoint. Yeah? Double click, and you're in Excel in PowerPoint. Cool? What's wrong? No, you can't make it big. Did I put an Excel file out for this PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, you can launch the Excel file too. I forgot if I did that. There's a topic 7 Excel file, so I was anticipating my issues, I guess. So I'm just going to play around with this one. Oh, what happened to the screen? Did that just go away?
Yeah, for a couple minutes.
If it's still gone. The what? The what button? B? Where's B?
On the computer. I think it's the
The B button? What button are you talking about?
No, that's not. I think it's the light itself.
That's not a perfect place to stop.
I think kind of remember we couldn't turn it off.
Now it's cooling down. That's not good.
I guess that's a good time for a break.
It's not a good time for a break. I was just getting into this. Shit. Yeah, I saw someone out there. Let me just see if this can turn back on. Shit. Let's give it 1 minute here. Andy, would you like to leave a little bunny?
How about story time? You remember story time? So, you know this one. I start a story, and you have to pick it up where I leave you. Ready to start?
Those always end poorly.
I wouldn't trust this. Well, let's do it. Here we go. Ready?
This is gonna get real weird.
It is. Funniest thing happened to me driving on the way to the Chubb Center. I was driving down the road, there was a detour, and I got off the road, and there was this path that I got on. I don't know how I got there. But as I'm driving along, I see this dog standing there with a sign that says, "Hey, I'm a talking dog. Stop and talk to me." So I pull over my car, and I say, "Hey, you're a talking dog." And he says to me,
Hello. I'm a talking dog.
I can't believe the dog was actually able to talk. And let's go for a run on the Wissahickon.
Better still, right? Oh, we just went up. I'm looking for a hardware store that sells generators.
Wow.
You can find those in Tennessee.
You're in the Urban Dictionary.
So the projector itself. Insert Calvados joke here. Go ahead.
The green light was on, but it just went black during the lecture.
I'm lost.
And but now I turned it off and back on. But I'm afraid to turn it off again because I don't go through cooling.
I'm just wondering if the shutter ridge hit blank screen by chance. I don't know. Because I'm not seeing the lamp on. I don't know, the AV guy. I talked to the AV guy, he said he'd be right down, but he didn't seem anxious to leave, that's for sure.
And then we both took a very long nap.
And that's when he looked at me and he said, "Take a hit of this."
Whoa! All right, maybe we should stop.
What do you say, Jackie?
Which made me decide to go to a Halloween party dressed as.
M&M's, of course.
And then I asked Jim, what are we doing?
Lecturing and it just died. I powered it off, tried to power it back on, so I got a red and green now. But it was green.
It might just be.
It's all green now.
Better pretty quickly.
I'm hoping it's not a ball.
Yeah.
And Marty kept talking
There we go.
about
It's firing back up.
And it's weird. The last time I did it too is when I transitioned the screen to do something weird. I thought something different, but it's just transitioning the screen.
Yeah.
But I didn't have an urban dictionary.
So after we get our degree in June.
Locked in a padded room for 6 months.
Still trying to open this generator box. Peter, got any scissors?
All right, good job.
I'm going to do a project.
We'll do bunny later.
That's not it. Where's my project? I'll just try this. One of these, right?
Windows P.
Oh, you should, yeah. So the talking dog, what we.
Sorry, a duplicate.
Oh, it is.
Andy, thank you, my friend.
You're welcome. For you, man.
They'll never walk in here again.
All right.
Ready to rock? All right. It's probably just been a warm up for some reason. I'll bring it up to date.
Okay.
Check in when. You're going to bring up a spare? I couldn't get it up.
For the next class? After lunch?
Yeah.
I got to finish this
lunch
lunch.
here.
All right. Thanks, man. All right, well, that was fun. I'm glad I didn't hear where that story was going. But,
It's probably better that way.
it's the running joke I have with Andy is, he's like, what are you doing today? Oh, I'm doing hedging FX with options. I'm like, you doing like bunny today? What are you doing today? Like, do we pay you to do that? Anyway. All right, so, wow. The other benefit of having these cash settle, or at least modeling as if it were a cash settle, is you can do kind of scenario analysis and try to see what your exposure is. So I've input all the information here using my input formats. You know, I'm really anal about that, right? So it's £1 million, 20 million pesos. We have
You realize we can't see that.
it go away again? Oh, you can see that, can't you?
Glasses, sure.
I'm sorry. Maybe I should launch these. I'll try. All right. So what we have here is if the exchange rate is between 110 and $1.50 on £1 million, you'll get between $1.1 million and $1.5 million of revenue, right? I'm going to call that my unhedged revenue. However, if I have that forward contract, that cash settle forward contract with Goldman Sachs that pays me when the pound changes, this is the payoff of that contract. So this contract is going to pay me $200,000 if the exchange rate goes to 1.1. When I add those two numbers together, I always have $1.3 million. All right? So, no matter what happens to the exchange rate, even though I'm gonna sell pounds and get less dollars, it's going to be perfectly offset by this contract that pays me if the pound devalues. The pound devalues. All right. So, just for modeling purposes, it's kind of nice to just put it in there like that. Let me slide this a little bit. Now, the other advantage of doing it this way, and this is going to help you out in the assignment if you set up a spreadsheet like this, a lot of companies don't hedge 100% of their expected revenues and costs. They have something called a hedge ratio or a coverage ratio. So a typical one would be, all right, I expect to get £1 million, but I only want a contract to hedge 800,000. That's called a hedge ratio, 80% hedge ratio. So notice this, nothing happened here, right? This is what I'm expecting. This is if I actually sell £1 million, but I've only hedged using a contract that's based on 800,000. Notice this line is no longer flat because I have a little risk on that 200,000. So they're not perfectly offset anymore. Now notice if I change the hedge ratio or a hedge to 0. This is what my position looks like if I don't hedge at all. I'm going to get between 1 million and 1.5. If I hedge all of them, it's always 1.38 million, but I don't have to hedge all. And the main reason firms don't hedge all is because they're like, well, what if we don't actually get $1 million or £1 million in revenue? I'll just hedge something a little bit less and reduce the risk. So that's what typically what would happen is you might hedge 80% of the expected revenues in pounds a year from now. And then this just does the transaction. If I bought 20 million pesos, it'll cost me between $1 million and $1.2 million, depending if the exchange rate is 20 to 16. However, I have this contract that pays me the difference between whatever the spot price is and the forward price times the quantity. When you put them together, I'm perfectly hedged. But I could change this number to only hedge, say, 15 million of the purchase. And it'll just be a little slope to the line. So that becomes your main decision in hedging. First of all, figure out how much you're going to receive and pay in each currency and decide how much of it you want to hedge. Say 50, 90, 100%.
Is there usually any small fees, like 1% or anything like that?
Not on these forward contracts. All the fee is built into the bid-ask numbers. The difference between they buy. Because if you call the bank and say, you can't just say, what's your exchange rate 1 year from now for the peso? You'll say, I want to buy peso or sell peso because they'll give you two different prices. So their fees are built into the bid-ask spread. Okay. And there's a question over here. No.
Me.
Oh.
So the decision there between hedging fully or not is like if you gain more profit with that revenue, then you should hedge it. And if not, right? If it's more expensive to hedge than to make that extra 200, like you're talking about revenue, right? Why hedge 800 or $1 million? So that's $200,000. If you gain your revenue and your cost for hedging is bigger than your profit, right? Like how would you make that decision?
Well, usually it's more based on quantity uncertainty. Like, I don't know exactly what my revenue will be. I'm 80% confident we'll have $1 million, so let's only hedge 80% of the actual amount. If you knew for certain, like this is a signed contract with a counterparty that would not fail, I would hedge all 100%. But to the extent that you're not sure who the customers are and you think you'll sell $1 million, I would probably hedge a little less. That's all. So I think it's more about the quantity uncertainty on the actual sales and purchases than the actual any view on the exchange rate. Because if I knew I definitely am going to get £1 million next year, I would definitely enter into a forward contract to sell all of them today.
The fact, every extra unit you sell, you make an extra profit, right? So that profit should be better than the cost of you hedging that extra purchase. That's what I'm saying, right?
But you are making roughly a 30% margin on this product. The only uncertainty is the exchange rate. And yeah, the exchange rate could go in your favor or it could go against you. But why not just lock it down and worry about making the next widget and improving your processes instead of worrying about exchange rates? That's my view. It's like, why take the risk? Yeah. It's just another risk of cost. Why not just lock it down? And it's really easy to do. Take a couple phone calls. All right. So the advantage of kind of using that equation, even though you have physical settlement, is it allows you to kind of think about exposures and think about changing the quantities and hedging less than 100% and see what it does. Remember, hedging zero, that's what your exposures look like to your cost and revenue. So you can start playing with them and trying to figure out what percentage you'd like to hedge. Any questions? All right. Here's where it gets nasty. And you thought it was a few minutes ago. Let me know if that screen goes out. All right. So, what about an option? All right, so options sometimes, a little confusing to think about. But instead of having a contract to sell 1 million pounds at $1.30, what if you can purchase an option to sell 1 million pounds at $1.30? But you can always walk away. All right, that's an option contract. What if you purchase an option to buy 20 million pounds at, 18 something? Now, the purchase of that option is going to be a cost today. All right, forward contracts, there's no upfront cost besides maybe collateral if you're not trustworthy. But you just sign a contract to exchange next year. If you buy an option to buy pesos or sell pounds, you have to pay something today. So what if the put option to sell 1 million pounds at a price, a strike price, it's called the strike price is kind of like the forward price, the price at which you get to sell at. That strike price at $1.30, that option is selling for 5.2 cents per pound. That means you could purchase that option for 5.2 cents times 1 million pounds. You give Goldman Sachs $52,000 today. You now have a contract in your hand, which if you choose to exercise, you could then sell 1 million pounds at $1.30. But if you don't want to, just throw it away. That's an option. So at the end of when the end of the option's life, you can just decide whether or not you'd like to exercise. Now, I'm going to see if I can find the Excel file, because last time that screen went out was when I transitioned to Excel, right? So I'm just worried that that's causing it. So let me see if I can find, what's it called? Topic 7, does it start with?
EMBA.
Starts with the EMBA topic? Oh, well. This one? All right, so I'll launch this one. And I can make it bigger. I apologize for that. All right. This is the option one. All right. The BS model. That does not mean bullshit, all right? That is Black-Scholes. So this is a model. We did Black-Scholes a little bit in the core class. So it's a model to price options. Okay, it's based on, continuous time stochastic calculus. These smart dudes, Black and Scholes, figured out a model to price options, which is widely used today. Remember, Scholes won the Nobel Prize for this. Black was dead at the time, so he could not win the prize, but they both would have won the prize. But the nice thing about this model, it just needs a few inputs. So I'm looking at a option to purchase 1 million pounds. What do I have to put into the model to tell me theoretically how much that option should cost? I need to put the current price of the pound. That would be the spot price. And at the day I looked at this, the pound was selling for $1.29. I put in the strike price, the price at which you would like to sell the pounds at in the contract. That's $1.30. I put in 1 as the maturity. I put in the expected annualized standard deviation of the exchange rate. That's been about 10% for the pound, if I look at the percent standard deviation for the last few years. And then I just need to put the U.S. risk-free rate for 1 year maturity and the British 1 year sovereign rate. I put that in, and the model spits out that it is about a little over 5 cents for the call and 5.2 cents for the put. Don't worry about the deltas, it's just another metric that comes out of it. So this model, based on the assumptions that exchange rates changes are normally distributed and follow a random walk process, it goes through some space science, rocket ship science to calculate the value of these options. We talked about that last year. Bottom line, Black-Scholes says it's worth about 5.2 cents. The only variable anyone will debate is this thing right here. And it's probably between, say, 8 and 11%. So we're talking that the price is probably as high as 5.7 and as low as 4.2 cents per pound. But this would be a place to start. If I had to figure out what would be a fair price for the option, I just plug that information, get the last couple of years standard deviation of the exchange rate, and I've got a price of the option, 5.2 cents. Notice there's a different price for a call versus a put. In this case, the puts are a little more expensive, 5.2 cents versus 5.1 cents. So I'm gonna, oh my God, that's the code in VBA to get this thing to work in your computers if you needed it. And we went ahead and valued that at 5.2 cents. And by the way, we can value the put option by plugging in. So the put option is a little bit different. I'm sorry, the peso option is a little bit different. For Black-Scholes to work, you always have to put direct quotes. It doesn't handle indirect quotes. So my spot price is 1 over 18. I'm sorry, my strike price is 1 over 18, and the current spot price today is 1 over 17. I need to put everything in dollar terms. And that spits out that says the put should be selling for about 0.2 cents per pound. All right, so this is how you use Black-Scholes to value a call and a put on currencies. Just simply put everything in dollar terms. So you have to flip those indirect quotes and always put it where it says risk-free rate, put the U.S. Treasury rate with the maturity of the option, and then put the foreign interest rate where it says dividend yield. Or well, I actually listed risk-free rate there. All right, so that's how I'd price those options. All right, any questions? You okay so far? All right, so soon I'm going to get to the one slide that kills people, and I'd like to apologize. It's that one slide I was kind of busy on the forward one, except I'm going to make it busier on the option one, okay? Let me just make that a little bit bigger. All right. So I priced those two options, and now I'm going to buy an option. So let's talk about the contract to sell £1 million. I could have bought a forward, or entered into a forward to sell £1 million at $1.30. All right, and lock into those proceeds of revenues of $1.3 million. However, they could also buy a put on £1 million. It'll cost them $52,000. That's a sunk cost, by the way. Right? You're going to pay that 5.2 cents today, and then you have that option. You can use it or not use it, but it doesn't matter. It's a sunk cost. And what you're doing is you're going to guarantee yourself getting a minimum of $1.3 million next year. Because no matter what happens, you could exercise the option and sell the £1 million for $1.30. You got it? Minus the $52,000 you paid for the option. So your worst case scenario, you don't care what happens to Europe or Britain. You don't care what happens to Britain, because worst case, even if the exchange rate plummets, you have a contract to sell £1 million at $1.30. You're going to get it $1.3 million. Yes, you spent your $52,000 for the option, but your worst case scenario is getting $1.25 million, which is the $1.3 million minus the cost of the option. That's your worst case scenario. That's if, a nuclear explosion or plant, takes out the entire island and the pound goes to zero. In that case, you will tell Goldman Sachs that I would like to sell, I'm exercising this option. I want you to give me $1.30 for each option, or for each peso pound. I should have used a different P. Peso pound kills me. So that's the worst case scenario, that you have to exercise the option and get $1.3 million minus the cost of the option. However, the best case scenario is the pound appreciates, right? The pound goes to $2, right? Think about it. If the pound goes to $2, you're going to get $2 million. And if the pound, minus the $52,000 you paid for the option. And if the pound goes to $3, you get $3 million minus the $52,000 cost of the option. So the beautiful thing about options is you have the worst case, it sets a floor, kind of the worst case scenario. The worst case is you wind up having to exercise the option, get $1.3 million minus the $52,000. However, if that doesn't happen, everything else is better. Because that means the pound appreciated, you didn't need the contract. Sound cool? The only downside is you had to pay that $52,000. Oh my God. Now that's all you need to know if you actually want to hedge 100% of this. You just call Goldman Sachs and say, I want an option to sell £1 million at $1.30. I need a put option. And my Black-Scholes is saying 5.2 cents. Can you match that? Yeah, cool, done, contract set. I'll send you $52,000. I now have a contract. I'll tell you next year whether I'm going to exercise. Right. By the way, when would you exercise the option? What does the exchange rate need to be next year to exercise that option? First of all, you're going to exercise if it's below or above $1.30 next year. It's one of those. It's one of those. So you have an option to sell £1 million at $1.30. Are you going to exercise it if the exchange rate is $1.40 or $1.20? $1.20. So you're only going to exercise it if the exchange rate winds up being below $1.30. You will exercise it if it's 1/2 cent above, 1 cent above, or 1 fraction of a cent above 1.30, whatever that was. So, all right, so here's the problem. I want to model it. How I'm going to model it is using this nasty equation, which I kind of gave you last year. In Excel, you can model the exercise for a put option by saying the maximum of 0 or that strike, what's that, 1.38, times whatever the spot price is next year times £1 million, minus my $52,000. How this maximum function works is when ST winds up being different than X, right, that number is going to be either above or below 0. When this number here is negative, this function will pick up the 0, and it's modeling as if you didn't exercise. So it's just taking the greater of 0 or this other number. If this number on the right-hand side is negative, that means you would have paid money if you exercised. It'll say, no, you didn't exercise. You just walked away from the contract. So this is modeling the exercise decision. So what if the exchange rate turns out to be $1.20? What do we say? We're going to exercise or not exercise? All right, we're going to exercise. We're going to exercise, and we're going to get 130 minus 120 times $1 million. Minus my $52,000 I already paid, I'm going to make $56,000. That's what this little Excel function will do to you. Max 0, 130 minus 120 times my $1 million quantity minus my $52,000.
If you don't exercise, then is the amount, I mean, you still paid for that option. So,
right, so good point. If I don't exercise, the answer is always negative $52,000. So any number I plug into here, gets lower, higher and higher, it just winds up being negative $52,000. That's why I want to show you this. If the exchange rate goes anywhere above 130, you just lose $52,000. That's just the price. This is the unexercised cost of the option. All right, so this is just the option profit if the exchange rate is between 110 and 150. If the exchange rate goes in your favor, in other words, it appreciates, you just lost the $52,000 sunk cost. However, you just made a killing. You got to sell your pounds at $1.30, $1.40, $1.50, $1.60. So that's okay though, right? Because we got to, we lost that $52,000, but life is good. But anytime the exchange rate goes down, we're going to start getting paid from Goldman Sachs. And look what happens. Anytime the exchange rate goes down, the worst case scenario is we get $1.25 million, which is the $1.3 million minus the $52,000. This becomes the revenue function with the hedge. Anytime the exchange rate goes down, who cares? I get 1.25. If it goes up, awesome, I keep the upside. That's what it always looks like. This is the payoff function if you wind up putting this hedge on. This is your worst case. The pound devalues, but who cares? I got a contract. If it appreciates, I just throw out the contract and make a ton of money. So your basic choice is I could enter into a forward to get this payoff, or I can get an option to get this payoff. What would you rather have? I'll tell you that one of those positions is the one which 95% of corporations do. Which do you think that is? 95% of the hedging's with forwards. Why would you say?
They don't want to put out that $52,000.
They don't want to put out the $52,000. Functionally, I used to be in a hedging department for a big bank. Functionally, we didn't have a budget. So we didn't have a budget of $52,000. But we can enter into forward contracts like crazy. So that was easy. We just didn't have a budget. Our job was hedging. We didn't have an investment budget.
Is that why you got out of it? It was too frustrating for you? Because you said, oh, we could have had it.
It is frustrating. Well, actually, the most frustrating thing is when people, after the fact, Monday morning quarterback you. Well, that was stupid buying that option. We wasted that $52,000. Like, that's not the point. All right. The point is we didn't know what was going to happen, and we hedged it, so our exposure is limited. That's what drove me crazy. And I didn't like working every day. And they got like 4 weeks vacation. Like, what's that? Gotta have a minimum of 16 weeks. All right, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to insult you. All right.
Can you go back to the last slide?
Yeah.
So the max function, you always have to make sure the 0 comma is always in direct quotes, correct?
This is always in direct, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so this one's in pounds, so it's okay. It is direct. But when we do it for pesos, we'll have to flip it.
Right.
And I'll do that in a minute. So this is your choice. Do I just lock it down, or do I keep some upside? Well, let's say you have a budget. All right, so 95% of the corporation hedging is with the forward contracts. No, it's really easy. Just lock it in, and you get this nice, no risk. Why would you ever get the option? I say there's two reasons. One is there's immense quantity uncertainty. Like, I don't even know if I'll sell a widget. So that's one. So let me just do it all on an option. And two is you do have a view. You have a strong view the currency is going to appreciate. And you want to participate in that upside. Those are the two things I found. So immense quantity uncertainty, like you don't even know if you'll sell a widget, so let's just buy an option. Or you really do think it's going to appreciate, and you think you're going to be in this range up here, so you just do it.
Professor, on the first case, the option then is not against the exchange rate, but your revenue then, right? Like if you don't know if we're going to get, right? So you don't know if you're going to sell it, then why would you have an option?
Well, if this is a physical delivery contract, I don't want to be in a situation where I have to deliver £1 million when I didn't actually get any. So I'll just forward contract. So I just don't really know what the quantity is. So I'll just make it one big option. So it's just so much uncertainty. I don't want to lock myself with a forward contract. Lock myself into selling pounds I may not have. Yeah, you don't want to have a forward contract that forces you to sell pounds you don't have, but you can always just buy them in the marketplace. But you don't want to have to explain that someday. Is that okay? All right. So this is pretty cool, huh? Let's just talk a minute about the. We're almost. Well, it might be like 5 minutes over. Let's talk about. So this is hedging the sale of pounds using a put option on $1 million. And the advantage of having that spreadsheet. I don't want to do it. Oh crap. The advantage of the spreadsheet is you could then vary, I only want an option on £1 million or £500,000. The other advantage of the spreadsheet is, where is that here? Companies that do use options don't restrict themselves to forwards or options. They usually have a combination of both. So here's a strategy I've seen in the past. I expect to get £1 million. I expect to sell £1 million 1 year from now, but I'm really not sure on the quantity. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to enter into a forward contract to sell 800,000 at $1.30, and pick up an option to sell the other 200,000 at $1.30, and that'll cost me 5 cents times the 200,000. That would be a strategy that I've kind of seen a lot. is you enter into a forward contract on the known quantity and buy an option contract on the unknown quantity, or you just don't hedge the unknown quantity, just only hedge 50%. So if you did one of these mixed strategies where you have both a put option and a forward contract, you just have to you basically have to have two, you have your unhedged, and then you might have a column for profits on option, and you might have a profits on forward, and you add them together. So it's a little more complex. You've hedged some of your exposure with a forward because you know the quantities pretty well, and you hedge the remaining on options. And it also reduces your premiums because you're only paying the option on 200,000. Heath.
So if you did that, and let's say you really only sold 800,000, but you have this option for the other 200,000, which it pays for you to exercise the option. Does that end up being like it's not part of cost of goods sold and it goes into like some other kind of gain?
So great question. What if you entered into a forward contract to sell 800,000 at $1.30 and enter into a put option to sell the other 200,000 at $1.30, and that cost you a little bit of money, right? Next year rolls around, and you actually have only 800,000 as what your revenue was, right? So you use your forward contract and you sell them at $1.30. But now you're sitting here with this option, right? You don't have the quantity, like you didn't actually get the revenue. You don't have pounds, but the option is worth something. Like if you actually look at the payoff function, you'll make money if you exercise. So what you'll do is you don't want, even though you don't have the 200,000 pounds, if I just exercise the option, Goldman Sachs will pay me money. So what you'll actually do is go ahead and, if it's a physical delivery contract, you'll actually go out and buy the pound, those 200,000 pounds, exercise the option, make the money, and so you would still exercise the option even though you didn't have the quantity. But you'll make a little extra money. But what gets complicating is the hedge accounting on it. Like where does that gain show up? Like there wasn't, and it'll probably be other gains and losses from derivative trading or something like that. Then everyone's like, what are you running, a hedge fund? Like, what's going on? That's why people get nervous, too, with these things, is even though it made perfect sense. I had to exercise the option. It was free money. Like, I know we didn't have the pounds, but then it shows up in the income statement. You have to explain why you're making money on derivative bets on the pound. All right. And the last thing, I just duplicate this for a call option on 20 million pesos. So I could enter into a contract to buy 20 million pesos at 18, or I can enter into a call option to buy 20 million at 18. And I went through let me see, what was the price of that option? I don't have it here. I don't have it. It was less than a penny. It turned out to be, what was the price? Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. When I plugged in Black-Scholes, 1 over 18 is the strike, 1 over 17 something was the current spot price. It turned out to be 0.2 of a penny per peso. So if I take 0.2 of a penny times 20 million pesos, I'd pay Goldman Sachs $39,000 to have a call option to buy 20 million pesos at at 1880. If I exercise that, I'm going to wind up buying 20 million euros for a 1063, which is just like the forward contract. However, I lost the 39,000 option. So again, if you exercise it, it looks like a forward contract. You're going to wind up buying 20 million pesos at 1880, and you're going to wind up paying 1,063,000. However, you had that premium you paid to have the option, so you lost that $39,000. However, if the peso devalues, that's the best part of it. You don't exercise it, and you wind up buying pesos really cheap in the market. And all you do is you lost that $39,000. And that's what the last spreadsheet shows, that if you don't exercise, you just wind up losing the $39,000. However, if the peso devalues, you wind up, it costs you less and less money to actually buy the 20 million pesos. So that's the benefit, again, of the option, is you get to walk away and just lose that little sunk cost However, if the option does appreciate, that's when this thing kicks in. This is where the insurance kicks in. If it does appreciate, all right, you start getting checks of $146,000 at the exchange rate of 16 to 1. And that's going to set your floor. Like the worst case now is you wind up exercising the option, right? Buying all your pesos at 1880. You lose that $39,000. Worst case is you pay 1.1 million, but you could pay a lot less. So it's a lot like the other example we showed. It sets a worst case with the option, but things could get better. In this case, things get better means I pay less to buy the 20 million pesos. So that's your choice. Do I hedge? Don't hedge. If I hedge, do I use forwards or options? Most companies do forwards because they don't have the budget to buy options, or they're too nervous with options because they're real complicated. And if you do hedge, what percentage do you hedge? Do you hedge all, or 50%, 70%, 100%? And then do you do a mixed strategy where maybe I'll hedge 80% with forwards and 20% with options? That'll give me a little flexibility on quantity. That's the hedging game. Corporations are doing this every single day. All the major corporations, or most of the major corporations, are hedging their FX exposure. It's the most commonly hedged cost. That and interest rates are the most commonly hedged things in corporations. All right. Now, if your company is purely domestic, this analysis applies directly to any commodity you ever buy that has a forward or option market. Right, so whether you're buying oil and gas or gold or silver or stocks or bonds or corn or hogs, this is the exact same analysis. All right, if you're a farmer and you need to sell hogs, you can wait and see what happens. You can enter a contract to sell your hogs at a fixed price or have an option to sell them at a fixed price. If your business buys hogs, you can enter into you can just wait to see what happens, or you can enter into a contract to buy live hogs or frozen pork bellies or whatever you want to do at a fixed price or buy options. All right. Currency is just one commodity, and there's dozens and dozens of others. You can just do the exact same analysis. All right. I guess my last minute on hedging here, I'll just say that my own personal belief is companies should be hedging 100% of their expected quantities of both costs and revenues in foreign currencies with forwards. They should do that every day, for say the next 12 months of expected receipts and payments. 100%, not even their kind of minimum expected quantity. It's just 100%. All right. Take your best guess of how many euros you're going to receive next year. Enter into a forward contract to sell them all. If the quantity doesn't come in, that's okay. Just buy some out in the marketplace and deliver for the contract. That's the minimum risk position. Right? Why wouldn't you hedge a cost? It's so easy to hedge. It's the easiest to hedge. Right? I have these people argue with me all the time. Oh, we don't hedge FX. It can go up, it can go down. Like, are you crazy? Like if GM said well, we're not gonna hedge the price of engines. We'll just have Japanese tell us what they cost next year. Well, we'll price the car. We'll just see what engines cost next year. You'd be like, you're crazy. You'd get fired because engines are a major part of the car. Well, currencies are just another commodity you need to produce. Why wouldn't you? If you can lock down the price, why wouldn't you? It makes no sense to me why you wouldn't hedge 100% of foreign exchange exposure. And if they're not doing it, I don't understand why. Unless they're making such fat margins they don't care. Or maybe it's not a big part of their business. All right, so lost 5 minutes due to that technical issue. Had a little fun with Andy, Uncle Andy there. Next week, case is a little difficult. We'll consider it almost your final. It's a tough case, but do your best. Do your best, all right? It's not worth a lot of points anyway. I have a little Quizlet on Saturday. Little fun lecture next Saturday afternoon, and then we are done with a little team assignment. It's not big. It's a lot easier than the last three, the team assignment. Okay, and that'll just be due in the next couple weeks. All right, we good? We still friends? For now. All right, see you guys. Have a good lunch. See you next time.